Welcome to the Wired for Wellbeing podcast, where we explore how understanding your nervous system can transform the way you live, love, and relate. Today, we're exploring one of the essential and potentially most challenging aspects of healing: having our pain be seen and heard, sharing your vulnerability with a trusted other. The challenge is, while we may be aware of our desire to connect and have our pain witnessed, we all also have a pull to avoid and distance ourselves from shame and potential judgment. This is our human predicament. The path through is understanding the crucial need to heal in relationship and the need to move at a safe and comfortable pace. I'm Jeffrey Rutstein. I've been a practicing clinical psychologist for 4+ decades. And over that time, my experience has been that we are all inherently wired for well-being. We all hold the keys to greater happiness, ease, and connection in our lives. However, we are not taught how to access these capacities. When you work with your nervous system instead of against it, life opens up with more compassion, freedom, and ease. I'm joined by my good friend and producer, Steve Lessard. Hey, Steve, how was your weekend?
Hi, Jeffrey. My weekend was fantastic. How about yourself?
It was great, thank you. Each week, we use real questions from listeners just like you as doorways to explore how we each can work with our nervous system. Because while our stories differ, all of our nervous systems speak a shared language. If you'd like to leave a question, the number to call is in our show notes. So let's dive in. Steve, what do you have for us this week?
Okay, our question this week is another written question from a female who asked to remain anonymous. I thought I'd read the question and then we can discuss what's going on.
Great.
My question is regarding trauma memories that are stored in the body. I've recently been in the process of uncovering an intensely violent traumatic memory from before 4 years of age. The body pain that's coming along with it is strong. I get the pain first, and then some flashes over time of bits and pieces of context and what it's related to. Is it necessary to share this info with someone else? Or can I just continue to work through it myself with self-compassion and nervous system regulation tools? Jeffrey, what's going on here?
Oh, there's a lot. So I think to sort of help our audience contextualize a little bit of this. So when people have had trauma, some people always remember their trauma. It's always been a part of their memory or a dim part of their memory. And for many folks, they can have no conscious memory of their traumatic or harmful experiences. And so because of that, that's often referred to as dissociation, when we're amnestic for, have no trace or recall for a painful or traumatic event that befell us. So this person is talking about, obviously she's done some trauma work, and she's now working on this newer to her conscious mind memory of when she was 4 or under 4. So it tells us a couple of things about the nervous system right off. It tells us that her trauma, either from this incident or others, was so strong that it required her to dissociate. Not all traumas require us to dissociate in the moment. So that tells us that if this has been dissociated, it was a very, very powerful and charged trauma, and that the nervous system went into a protective phase by keeping it sort of under wraps and hidden, fragmented in a way. So that's the first thing. And I guess I want to say to this is that for our writer and for any of our other listeners, experiencing abuse and violence as a child is horrendous and overwhelming and profoundly, deeply wounding. But also, the younger the age that this kind of overwhelming force of trauma occurs at, the more disruption to our nervous system, the more wounding to a sense of self and to a sense of safety in the world. And the deeper the internalization and personalization of the trauma, meaning that all trauma survivors tend to take blame for their trauma, but the younger you are, even more blame can be, the self will pull even more blame on themselves, just how a younger mind works. So that's the first thing, is just, I'm touched by the level of pain with this. And obviously she's done work on the nervous system, because she's talking about, can I just keep working on this myself, which I've been doing, right, I assume. And, as long as I keep offering self-compassion and practice regulation, will that be enough? And on one level, that will be essential for healing. That is essential for her healing, to be able to find ways to meet this overwhelming pain and burden and all the collateral pain and disruption it creates. For example, shame. Violent abuse increases the level of intensity of shame we feel. The more violent an attack or abuse or trauma is, the more that it pushes our nervous system into an extreme response. And so one of the main responses from all trauma, but again, the younger you are, the more enshrouded it is in shame. That the whole incident and whatever little pieces of memory she might have as they come up will also have a very strong charge of shame in them, which also complicates and makes healing more difficult, because we just have this natural capacity. We don't want to look at shame. Shame does everything in its power to get us to look away, because it makes looking at ourselves so painful, because it's only focusing on what shame considers to be our worst qualities.
Yeah, and why would we want to share that with somebody, right? Like,
Exactly.
that's the thing you bury under the rug and never tell anybody.
Right. If you're smart, shame says, keep this to yourself. Why on earth would you go, hi, I'm a horrible person, hate me? That's no reason to do that. Or I participated. And it's not participation, it's being dragged into an abusive situation. But children and adults will often feel like they participated somehow in this happening to them. So it feels like, how can I tell someone about my pain when they'll be so clear that I caused it, that it was my fault, or that I'm shameful just because it happened to me? So there's so much in our nervous system that wants us to play it safe, relatively safe, and keep this all in ourselves. So that's one obstacle for many, many, many people, that makes it more difficult and challenging for them to share what they're going through, to let them share some of the things they've recalled. Another piece of that, though, too, is some people have told other people about their traumatic experiences, and these friends or other well-meaning folks will often be in disbelief. Oh, that couldn't have happened. Oh, your parents couldn't have been that bad. Oh, those strangers wouldn't have done that to you. And there's nothing more invalidating and gaslighting than to tell an abuse survivor that, oh, the trauma that you just told me you went through, it couldn't have happened. I know better. I know your parents or those people, and they never would have done that. There's nothing so dismissive, shaming, minimalizing as a response like that. Even if it's well-meaning, or thought to be well-meant, it's really just much more destructive for the person receiving it. So for some people, there's also a natural learned experience that when I tell people about my trauma, they don't accept it. They tell me I must be wrong. And so some people have given up on sharing some of the things they remembered because they don't want to keep getting this repeated. It's harmful. It feels almost re-traumatizing in a way. And I guess one other piece I want to include in this, because I think that this matters, is that many, many, many times in violent and coercive abuse, there is a threat, implicit and explicit, that if the child or victim was to tell anyone, that harm, great harm, would befall them and or their family. I'll kill your parents. I'll kill your pets. I'll kill your siblings, and then I'll kill you. And so part of the trauma is also the danger of breaking the secret. And this is true in these extreme cases. It's also true in family incest, largely even in family dysfunction, even if it doesn't go over exactly into abuse or trauma. There is this tendency for families to want to keep their secrets close. So having this kind of violent trauma before the age of 4 was most likely accompanied by express threats and intimidation about not telling anyone. And so there's also that layer of now, if our writer is thinking about telling people, she's going to have these flares going inside about why not. Well, it's going to bring up shame. People may tell me that it's my fault. And deep down, she may not even be fully conscious of this yet if she's just recalling parts of the memory, is that it's embedded in a life or death need to keep this secret. All those things, Steve, argue against our nervous system feeling comfortable in sharing something, right? But here's the dilemma. We only can heal so far on our own. And whether this means that many of us do absolutely need a therapist for a lot of this work, that's really important. And if someone else is struggling with this and you don't have a therapist, I would recommend that that be something you consider. And even for our writer, if she's not in therapy, I would say this, that it's important to continue the work that she's doing, meeting herself with as much self-compassion, being open to the pieces of the memory that arise. But doing this all on her own is sort of also forcing her back into a position after trauma occurs where the victim has to keep it a secret, keep it all in themselves, and do all of their work about making them seem okay to the outside world so they don't hide their wounds, their sore body, their shame. They need to still stay in the shadows about that. Steve, how's this landing on you so far? Is this making sense?
Yeah, it is. I'm seeing the real knot that can get tied for people in trying to stop what's going on or grow from what's going on or what happened in their past. You know, what occurs to me is I think most people not trained like yourself in meeting individuals where they are when they have something to share. I think most people are pretty bad at this. I think we respond from like our stories and like, oh, that couldn't have happened. I know that person. They couldn't have done. Like, I think we're bad at this for a number of reasons. I think it takes a lot of emotional intelligence to be good at it. And like, there seems like, how do you begin to trust someone to tell the story? Clearly, there's trained professionals who are skilled at navigating this, but then there are other individuals. And there may even be trust. Not may even be. There's absolutely trust needed, I imagine, in the therapeutic setting to get to that point to share. How do we start building that trust, or what do we look for in other individuals to say, is this someone who can meet this?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So let's back up a little bit. You said that a lot of us aren't really good at meeting other people, and I agree. I don't know if it's the majority of us, but in my understanding of it, it's a nervous system issue. The person who says, oh, no, your parents couldn't have done that, they're actually responding from their nervous system. They're not responding to the speaker's nervous system. They're responding to their own nervous system about how it would feel if they knew someone who could cause harm and they missed it. And that creates anxiety or upset, and it needs to be dismissed as soon as possible. So what comes out of us is usually something to help us feel better. We're thinking that it's supposed to help you feel better, but I'm actually saying this in some ways for my own nervous system because I'm in distress. No, they couldn't have done that. Therefore, this is not true. I don't have to take it into me. I'm keeping it out there, right? They're really interested in maintaining their own sense of safety, regulation, or predictability. And that's where we often will fail others. If we're going to show up for others, right, it's actually inviting us to be in a place where we try to tune into what they might need and in the most authentic way respond to it, not by being fake or making something up we don't feel. But if someone is telling me something and my response is just to deny it, that's shutting someone down and shutting someone up. And that's nothing about helping them. that's all about helping us. So I think that's one thing. And so that leads into, how do we tell when someone is safe? Well, there's levels to that. So one level is, do we feel relatively safe with this person? Do we feel like they have a kind regard for us, that they have a general ability to respect us, that they have shown us in the past or currently that they can listen to our feelings and our thoughts and not need to change them, diminish them, argue with them, but let us have our feelings and thoughts? That's a basic level of space that's essential for being in a relationship that feels safe and conducive to connection and to feeling good about ourselves and the relationship. So part of it is getting a sense of whether the person is feeling dangerous or not. And again, that goes back to, we've talked about neuroception. We have to feel into whether our neuroception of danger, if we're feeling danger, is actually matched or mismatched. Is this actually a danger I'm picking up from this person? Or is this situation reminding me of a danger in my past and I'm transferring that template onto this moment and thinking that this too is dangerous when it may not be? So there's a little discerning that we need to do about that.
In the past, Jeffrey, you've used this phrase that healing is relational, and I'm wondering if you can speak to like the power of relationship in particularly this instance. Like, why do we need another to witness this in order to have a degree of healing from it?
In particular, when abuse and trauma are hidden and secret, it goes into this part of our awareness that's on the side. It's not really an integrated part of our life, our history, or narrative. It's somewhere over here, though it exerts tremendous impact on how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about relationships, how we feel about the world. And the primary effect of trauma is that it's fragmenting and isolating. It separates us from our essence. It separates feeling from memory, from thought. We disconnect, and in doing so, we're trying to minimize or reduce the amount of pain and suffering we're experiencing. But this enhances our sense of being alone, different, not belonging. That our pain and our suffering is not part of humanity, it's part of our shameful being. And so we have to carry this burden, this load of painful, heavy shame and self-judgment, because that's my punishment, because that's just the reality about me. And as long as we stay there, it can become increasingly easy to believe that's true. But here's an interesting point. Shame dissolves in empathy and compassion. So, Steve, if you were to come in and go, I feel so ashamed, I can't believe I forgot to do this. And I said, well, that was a pretty big mistake, Steve. Why did you do that? That's not going to help you. That's going right into, yeah, you're right. You are kind of screwed up. Why did you do that? Instead of, oh, I know how bad that feels. God, that's a horrible feeling, isn't it? When you feel you've done something and it immediately goes to all of you is bad instead of guilt over doing one wrong thing, you just feel horrible about yourself. The first way in is to connecting with your shame. And what happens in that is that if I can receive you and your shame without judgment, without pulling away, and with the same level of warmth and compassion for the suffering that pain causes, pain quiets, the shame quiets, and you're able to feel a little bit more connected and regulated. In therapy, a big process of therapy is having a safe relationship where you can bring some of the things that you feel afraid to explore or to utter to other people or to think about yourself. And in the presence, in the relational presence with a therapist, a trusted, safe other, right, is that what happens is the person who is in this tumult is able to find their way back to regulation and see things a bit more clearly. Our writer, if she does all of this work on herself, and she could do a good deal of it, but probably not all of it. And what happens, though, is she's keeping the old economy going, Whereas once again, she is the sole person responsible for containing her hurt and her misery, making herself march on through life, and keeping the depth of her pain hidden. Most likely, like she did when she was around 4, and like she does perhaps in her adult life as well. So there's something that if we stay with the pull of trauma, that will always want us to stay isolated, small, and secreted. And healing is about taking up our space. It's about being able to be in relationship, and this is partly what is a profound aspect of healing, is taking back into me how you regard me. So if I come in the room, Steve, and I'm hating myself, and you're there with me, and you're not trying to talk me out of my hate, but you're being kind of loving and patient and just giving me space to be in my pain. But the fact that you're holding me in a sense of care and not telling me what I'm feeling is wrong or that I got to make it go away allows me to find my way back that I wouldn't be able to find just on my own. Because sometimes we really need co-regulation. It's not just what we can do with somatic practices and bringing our awareness, and they're fantastically helpful. And there's many, 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 many situations where they can be life-saving and life-transforming. But there are situations where we're so dysregulated that we actually need another regulated person's being, another regulated nervous system to be with ours, to help us find our way back. And in finding our way back, if I come back into regulation, for example, I can begin to see the abuse that I experienced under 4, like for our writer, in a different and more compassionate light. This happened to a baby. How horrible this is. Instead of the child's perspective persisting, which is what most often happens when we retap into old traumatic memories, and the child's perception will be absolutely smothered in shame, oppression, and terror. All the things that will make any nervous system want to stay silent and disappear. So someone has this real pull to sink and to avoid the connection of possibly feeling worse by telling someone about it. But if you can find someone whose nervous system is regulated enough so they don't have to tell you what you're feeling is wrong, and they can actually offer some compassion and care, that you can find your way back and begin to face these things in a different light.
So, what would you say to maybe the listener that I'm picturing right now who's got their headphones in and they're saying, I don't have access to those people. Those people aren't in my life. They're not around me. Maybe I don't have the resources to work with a therapist.
Well, first of all, therapy is very often an option, and a great option, especially if you know you have trauma. It's really, really helpful to have a partner and a guide, like a therapist, to help you go through the path that can be overwhelming and easy to get lost in. They can help you stay a bit more grounded, a bit more focused. And therapy can be very expensive, but there are people, places, foundations that offer supportive therapy for sliding scale fees and sometimes for free. Some places even do some kinds of work exchange. At least one place had that a few years ago. But I guess the first thing would be to consider therapy if our other listeners are in a situation like this. And I want to make sure that people don't hear this as a weakness, right? It is that if I was sending someone I loved into the jungle, I'd want them to be equipped: a flashlight, a canteen, some snacks, a map, and a cell phone, right? I'd want them to be prepared to go in. And what I'm saying is, if you're going to go on this journey, and you can certainly do a lot of it yourself, but there are going to be moments and times, possibly long periods of times, where you need to be working with a professional and again, the longer the trauma went on for, the more intense the trauma was, or the more violence it was, the more likely you will need a trusted guide like a therapist to help you unravel the complexity and the way that all of this can get entangled in the nervous system. For those of you who may not need a therapist at this point in time, because you've already done a lot of therapeutic work and you're continuing to work on your issues, you can try, of course, moving with some of the inner regulation, the self-regulation we've talked about. But it's also really helpful to have a trusted confidant that you can share, not as a therapist, but just sharing where you are and sharing a little bit about the struggles. But it needs to be someone, and this goes back to finding a safe and trustworthy person, is, are they able to hear it, right? Like, there are people who ask me what I do. And, I, especially in the past, I say I'm a trauma therapist, right? And people go, oh, and then silent. Oh, that's good. Talk to you later.
Don't want to talk about this.
Right. There'd be other people go, oh, really? What kind of trauma do you work with? But they were absolutely the fewest, because I think most people, like if I said I'm an oncologist, they would go, okay, thank you. Because like we don't want other people to be in pain, and we don't want to be in pain. So a nervous system perspective gives us a decoder for understanding what's afoot inside of us, but also gives me a map to understand, for example, Steve, what might be going on in your nervous system when we're relating. And in the past, because of my shame, if you were a little bit more withholding or quiet, I would have automatically interpreted that your withholding and quiet was because you didn't like me. Now I'm at a point where I go, if you're withholding and quiet, that's certainly not how you are, who you are. So there must be something going on in you. But that never would have occurred to me 10 or 15 years ago. The only link I would have landed on is the only reason Steve is different today is because of me, right? Shame makes us, and self-doubt makes us unquestionably assume we are the problem. That's always embedded in trauma. So again, that's the fear of, how can I tell you something I'm so afraid of that so clearly points to me as the problem? I kind of need to have a sense that you're not going to somehow use that against me, that you're not going to betray me or shame me or blame me with this, but you'll actually not pull away.
Jeffrey, I'm wondering if we can now take this sort of broad path I took us down and really focus back in on the questioner. And maybe as we're looking towards the end of this time here today, what do you want to leave this person with?
Hope. She's doing the good work. The fact that a long dissociated memory has come up is a positive sign. It's not a sign of decompensation. It's a sign of progression. Memories begin to arise as our nervous system has the space in the room to let some of them arise. And she's not being flooded by the memory. That's a more tricky thing, when she's getting the pain all the time and bits and pieces all the time, and she never has a moment where she's not getting either. I don't know exactly that, but it didn't sound like that's how it was being described in the email. And so if she's not having it all the time, that's great. Part of what she's doing is working. If she is having it all the time, that's another reason to think about working with someone. Because if we're dysregulated all the time, we're not easily finding our way back to regulation. And it's in regulation that we can process and heal a memory. I can't process it and heal it if I'm running around in terror or in rage or going into shutdown, shame, collapse, disappearing. I'm too far out of myself in either of those extremes to be able to process it, to have self-awareness, to do anything with it. If I move into regulation, I actually can witness. Kind of like before, I was saying, I didn't fully say this, but it takes two people to tell the truth, one person to speak and one person to listen. And people need to have their truth heard, and they only can have their truth heard in the living presence of another being. I don't think ChatGPT will, fill in quite as well as a truly empathic human who cares about you. So there is something that I think this person is still at the edges about, her shame and fear, trying to tell her, can't I just do this on my own? And while you might be able to, it will take you longer and be harder than if you're able to do the hard choice and work at finding and working with what's keeping you hesitant to share, and understanding that it's quite normal to be hesitant to share. But the hesitancy itself is one of the things that also is preventing some of the forward movement of healing. It's sort of aware of trauma, but now still keeping trauma yet another secret from the world. You're not keeping it a secret from you. Dissociation is a way of saying we keep secrets from ourselves. This is also a way of trying to keep the secret inside of her instead of sharing it with the world. And the hopeful message is this, as I think she'll find when she shares it with right people, that it will aid in her healing. It will aid in her ability to find her way back, especially to self-compassion and kindness, because that's really, really hard when we deal with a memory of this magnitude and intensity, right? It's just different. Again, it's different than if we're in a natural disaster or hurricane. There's a bit less shame. We can still have a lot of shame than deliberate interpersonal violence, which is exponentially more shaming and more soul crushing.
I want to express my gratitude for this individual sending in this beautiful and poignant question of where they are in their journey and allowing us to expand on it. And hopefully it was helpful to them, and hopefully it's helpful to others. Jeffrey, maybe you can tell people how they can get in touch with us if they've got a question.
I too would like to just take a moment to thank our questioner today. I really appreciate the sincerity and the vulnerability of this question. It is something that many, many people struggle with. And so your question will help others get some clarity on where they are in their own process. If you would like to send a question, feel free to call 866-357-5156, or you can send an audio recording in an email, or if you can't do that, just an email with your question to hello@drjeffreyrutstein.com. And this is the time where registration is still open for our once yearly 9-month journey in the Healing Trauma Program. This is a very deep dive into working with trauma, understanding somatic and body techniques to help you return to a sense of regulation and a sense of safety. So if you'd like to find out more about that, you can go to drjeffreyrutstein.com/links, and there'll be a link in there to take you to the current Healing Trauma Program. And if you found this helpful, please feel free to share with friends or family. Steve, as always, thank you for being my partner and friend in these explorations.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I really enjoy these times together and this opportunity to create this for all of those individuals out in the world.
And remember, this podcast is for informational purposes only and isn't a substitute for professional mental or physical health care. If you're struggling, please reach out to a qualified mental health care professional. Thank you all for being with us. Until next time, bye for now.